not have the distraction if we don't need it.
Okay. You can stop recording. To get started automatically. Yes, it's recording. Very good. Hey, everybody. Thank you for joining. We still got some people coming in, so we'll give it another minute or two and then we'll get started. People are still coming in. One more minute, and then we'll start. Mhm. Still people coming in. Yeah, it's good. Are you? I didn't get a request. I didn't register sound. Oh. You want to try that? We can try. There it is. Worked. Okay. All right, it's 2 minutes after. We'll go ahead and get started. Bear with me for 1 second here, guys. I'm gonna close this. Hey, Ethan, can you, since I think all the attendees can't talk until the end, can you see my mouse move just out of curiosity?
Yep, I can.
Okay. All right, I always check that. Never confident. Okay. Thank you, guys. We'll go ahead and get started. I'm Austin Dillon with Pierce Phelps. Most of you know me, but for those of you that don't, I help with managing the Carrier Bryant Ductless line, along with David Lamb, who's here sitting next to me. And we also have Ethan Hoberman, who is our regional sales rep from the factory from Carrier. So thank you again for joining. We do these, for those of you guys who have been to multiple of these, you kind of know the drill. Thank you again. For those of you guys that are new, we do these 2-3 times a year where we just try to keep dealers that are currently engaged with the product up to date. Some of it's just refresher, some of it's new stuff. And then we also, of course, invite any prospective dealers or dealers who are new to the product to come on, get a little bit more familiar with the product, and then as time goes on, again, stay up to date with any changes. So There's always a lot of changes occurring with this ductless line. All so far, I think we can say for the better. You know, we're always excited to see what they have. It's always been pretty good. We have yet to be really disappointed. So we'll go ahead and get into it. Well, basically what we're going to do is we're going to go over the product as it exists. We've gotten a little bit of a reprieve where we don't have a bunch of new product to review. I say that, I guess, with a caveat, but we're going to take some time to review the line as it exists and as it has existed maybe for the last almost year. That'll be mostly for the benefit of anybody who's new to the product, still trying to learn the offerings, but hopefully it offers a nice opportunity for a review for anybody that's been selling it. Just some reminders as to what some of your options are, maybe what some best practices are, some alternative approaches to using some of the equipment. Then we'll look at the 454B refrigerant change. We're going to look at the timeline. So, you know, when we can order that, when we should expect to see it, when you guys will expect to start seeing it and being able to sell it. And then we'll look at the new product, the new 454B products. There's some pretty significant changes. I think they're pretty exciting. Obviously, some things will probably change between now and the time that we actually see those products, but we'll give you a little overview of what we currently know about those products. And then we'll do another one of these webinars in the fall to really, we'll know what we need to know. We'll have all the details at that point, and we'll do a deep dive into all of the products. And then Ethan's going to talk to us about 25C tax credit updates and some other rebates. And of course, we always have a list of sort of resources at the end. So, and then we'll open it up for questions, of course. So jump right into it. Most of us have seen this slide. It hasn't changed too much. I ran out of room to keep adding all the options that exist in the performance and preferred line. And I did my best, guys, to dual brand this. I know we've got Carrier and Bryant dealers here. I try not to show any bias. If there's more Carrier or Bryant slides, one way or the other, please forgive me. But this kind of gives you the bird's eye, and you can see that the preferred and the performance line is where we really focus our attention when we're selling this product. It is where what we refer to as our universal single zone outdoor resides, meaning we've got a single outdoor unit that we can connect all of these different indoor options to. It's where our multi-zone unit resides. And you can see currently in the comfort and legacy lines of the entry tier, and then in the premium, infinity, and evolution tier, there's only single zone high wall offerings. That will change by the end of the year, but currently that's the state of it. So we really, in the past and for the time being, continue to focus on the performance and the preferred line, because that's really where all the variety and value is. But we'll take a quick moment just to review them. These slides, and I apologize, this one's branded only Carrier. It would be legacy as well for Bryant. But these slides come directly out of the quick system price books that we send out. So obviously this one has no pricing, but you guys should have a copy of this book with your pricing populated. If you do not, then please contact me or your TM, and we'll make sure to get it out to you guys. Know that there was a price increase that went into effect the 6th. So these price sheets reflect that price increase, and then they've also been updated with the M1 rating, so CR2, ER2, HSPF2. And I try in that book to just give you what you need and none of what you don't, right? So in this case, you get the indoor and outdoor model, you get the nominal capacity, you get the heating capacity at 5 degrees, you get that same heating capacity at 5 degrees as a percentage. Some people find that more digestible. You get the pertinent efficiency ratings, the line set size and max lengths, the voltage, recommended breaker, and then outdoor cabinet size. And then over on the top right, I'll give you the, if there are any, I'll give you the accessory part numbers and prices, and then anything that might be included as an accessory, like a wired controller, Wi-Fi kit or something. If that's included, then it'll indicate it there. So that just gives you an idea of the format of the price book that you should have. And we won't dig into it any further as we go through. I just want to kind of take a minute to familiarize you with it. So looking at the Comfort Series, again, it is a single zone high wall unit only. It runs 9 through 24,000 BTUs. Has relatively impressive efficiency ratings for an entry tier. A lot of entry tier products from competitors are fixed SEERs at like 16 or 17. You can see ours hover around 20 on average. So pretty nice, budget friendly, single zone high wall offering. Don't need to say too much about it. I will say, I think most of us know this, but I'll take this opportunity to sort of hit some broader ones. All of our equipment, single and multi-zone, comes with a base pan heater. It all comes with a 10-year warranty when registered, 30-day DOA. And it all has, this question comes up quite a bit, low ambient cooling out of the box on all models. So they will all cool down to -13 outdoor temperature, which means that you can apply them for your process cooling applications. Most commonly, that's like a server room or something like that. So they all come with those features standard in all models, regardless of tier. They all also come, they do not come standard with Wi-Fi, but they all have the ability to have Wi-Fi added to them with a factory kit. And that kit varies a little bit from model to model, but for the most part, what it consists of is just a thumb drive or a USB drive. There's a USB port inside of the unit. Again, that varies a little bit based on model, but in the case of the wall mount unit, there's a USB port. You slide the USB into the port, download the app, press a button on the remote, and follow the instructions. So typically get those set up in about 5 minutes. They're very easy to install, and they're available for all of our equipment. So that's sort of some stuff that applies broadly, and then we'll continue on looking at the product line. I'm skipping the mid-tier product and looking right at the Infinity and Evolution wall mount. And again, that's because we really focus on the mid-tier. We're just kind of going to get these wall mounts out of the way and then move on to sort of the meat and potatoes of it. So we currently only offer this in 9 and 12,000 BTUs. It's single zone high wall only. It does come with a Wi-Fi kit. And the indoor unit does have some premium features. We really don't focus a lot on this product because the performance product has so much value, as either you already know or we're about to see. But I will go over the features that this product offers, partially because they're pretty impressive, but also because they apply to our mid-tier products. So I can talk about them now, and then we'll know that they all apply to that preferred performance high wall as well. The one difference being that this one actually comes with the Wi-Fi kit included in the box. So you do not have to pay for the Wi-Fi as an accessory with this Infinity or Evolution unit. Comes with it included. On the preferred and performance, you would have to buy it as an accessory. I think it's less than $100 typically. Both units come with a motion sensor, and there's 2 pieces of functionality associated with that motion sensor. One is that it can be set up, doesn't have to be used, but can be set up to detect when a space is either occupied or unoccupied. So if it detects no occupancy in a space after 30 minutes or so, it'll go into a setback or reduced compressor frequency to save energy. And then when it notices somebody re-enter the space, it'll resume operation in the occupied mode. Don't have to use that, but you can. And then it also has the ability through the remote to tell it to either direct air toward or away from the occupant. And that is facilitated by the next feature. Obviously, if you're going to have that feature, you have to have the next one, which is both vertical and horizontal motorized louvers. So you've got control via the remote for vertical operation, which is typical for all ductless units. But a lot, if not most, ductless wall mount units still use sort of the manual car method of directing air horizontally. This one has motorized louvers. And again, that applies to the mid-tier product as well. And the mid-tier product and the premium product also share a relative humidity sensor. So And there is a caveat here. This is only guaranteed to work with a single zone unit, whether that be in the preferred or performance unit or in the Infinity Evolution unit. They're only going to guarantee this functionality when it's a single zone unit. When you connect these high walls to a multi-zone, and again, most of us know this, but I'll take a moment to say it for those of us that might not. All of our indoor options are universal, meaning that they connect to either single or multi-zone equipment. We don't have dedicated indoor options for multi-zone and then a different model for single. It's both single and multi. We like that, makes it really easy for ordering. Customers like that for the most part, but it does present, a couple of little nuances. For instance, one is the auto mode, right? If I have a single zone unit, not that we really ever recommend auto mode with these, just doesn't provide great comfort, as most of us probably know. But if I have a single zone unit and I so desire, I can put it in auto mode, right? It's going to maintain a fairly wide deadband, so comfort might not be great, but it will work, right? It'll manage heating and it'll automatically flip over to cooling. However, on a multi-zone, I can't use that because I've got multiple heads that might be calling for conflicting modes. So the question comes up, well, how come I have a multi-zone unit? The remote has an auto option. It's the same unit that's installed on single zone equipment. So there are these little nuances that sometimes pop up, and the relative humidity functionality is one of them. It works as advertised in single zone installations. It may work depending on what's going on a multi-zone. If it's the only head calling and the size is appropriate, it'll work fine. But if the outdoor unit is trying to manage multiple calls from multiple heads, all bets are sort of off with the relative humidity function. However, in the single zone context, it will allow for dehumidification without overcooling. So what that means is that for most products in the field, I put it into dry mode. It doesn't ask me a relative humidity value. It doesn't ask me a temperature set point. Basically goes into low fan, cold coil, turn it off once it's dry enough and or cold enough in the space. And certainly most dealers are probably familiar with that call. We get it in tech support. How come I put it in dry mode and I left and I came back and my garage is like a meat locker? There's no set point. It runs until somebody turns it off. So in the case of these two units, when you put it into dry mode, because it has a relative humidity sensor, it's going to ask, what relative humidity target would you like? And what temperature target would you like? And it will then run a target evaporator coil temperature, a fan speed, a compressor RPM to converge on both of those targets at the same time. And as long as it's reasonable, right? If it's the middle of summer and you say, I want it to be 75 in here with a 30% relative humidity, it's not going to hit that target, spoiler. But as long as it's reasonable, hey, I want it to be 45, 50% relative humidity, want it to be 71 degrees. It's very good at maintaining that and providing nice comfort. It will allow for overcooling by up to 1 degree. So that applies to the Infinity and Evolution high wall, but probably more importantly, it applies to the Performance and Preferred high walls as well. We are in the process of liquidating the Infinity and Evolution single zone high wall systems. So we have discounted them pretty significantly. Not that they're bad units at all, but as you guys know, we've got a lot of new units that are coming in. So we've got to make room in inventory and try to manage that as best we can. So we would like to offer these prices to you guys to get them sold by the end of the year. You can see the quantities there. We don't have, depends on the capacity. Some we have quite a few, like the 12K Infinity, it looks like. Others we have very few of. So it's only obviously while supplies last. We're not going to be bringing more in, but be aware. You can get an extremely efficient system. And I'll go back real quick to the performance on these. Just to point out, not really, the efficiency's changed a little bit, and this one has not been updated with this here too, but really what I want to point out is the heating performance on these is really phenomenal. So a 9K unit at 5 degrees will deliver 13,000 BTUs of heat, and the 12,000 BTU unit will deliver almost 14,000 BTUs at 5 degrees. So they both deliver, especially in the case of the 9K, well over 100% heating capacity at 5 degrees. So they're like super high heat models. So they're great for sunrooms, places where you might have a high heating load. And at these prices, you're going to get all those features that we talked about, all the performance and the efficiency. So be aware of that. There are some very good prices. We get some calls and say, hey, is this right? These are so cheap. Yes, it's correct. All right, moving on to the performance and the preferred series. Single zone unit. And as you guys will see or already know as we move through this, it's really the same outdoor unit in every one of these slides, just with a different indoor option. So in this case, it's the 38 MARB, and that model runs 6 through 36,000 BTUs. And we're matching it with, in the case of Carrier, a 40 MAHB. And Bryant, guys, I apologize, I don't have it on this slide. I have it on some subsequent slides. It would be the 619 AHB Bryant version. They're identical. The only difference being one is branded Carrier and one is branded Bryant. Again, we said 6 through 36,000 BTUs, single zone only, and you can see that. And this, this may be a detail that's worth noting. It might not, but for some of us who are pretty honed in on this product, it's worth sort of being familiar with this. We're going to come back to it. It sort of has had some ripple effects with the product. So the 6, the 9, the 12, the 18, and the 24 are all considered high heat units. You can see that real quickly just by looking at the percentage of delivered heat capacity at 5 degrees. They all deliver 100% heating capacity at 5 degrees, or in some cases a little bit over. You can also see that the 30 and the 36 are not high heat units. We're going to come back to that a little bit later, but just bear that in mind that in this MARB line, the 6 through 24 are high heat units standard. So currently, we don't make a huge differentiation. We don't have a standard heat version of a piece and a high heat version, right? It's not offered in 2 flavors. You just get the high heat in most of these models standard, which is great. And the question comes up all the time, well, how come the 30, the 36, as you guys are going to see on a slide or two later, we go all the way up to 58. How come those models are not high heat? And I'm not saying that this is the answer, but in my mind, this is kind of the answer. It wasn't so long ago that nobody looked at a single zone ductless unit very often that was larger than 2 ton. It just didn't make a whole lot of sense, right? And that's still the case, and our single zone wall mount sales are typically 9, 12s, and 18s. Even the 24 is sort of an outlier. The 6 is popular, but usually in multi-zone applications. But the 9, the 12, and the 18 are popular, both single and multi. And so nobody really paid a whole lot of attention to the 30, the 36. You guys will see on a slide or two that we have a 48 and a 58 as well. Nobody ever really bought those models or cared to look at their specifications, because when in the world of single zone equipment, they weren't selling anything that large. It was called a mini split, I guess, for a reason. However, and I don't think this was anticipated, certainly at the time that those outdoor models were manufactured or engineered, that changed when we moved into air handlers, right? So now, all of a sudden, I've got a full-size multi-position air handler. Now I'm interested in selling that at 36 or 48 or even 58,000 BTU. So it went from, these are models that really nobody pays attention to. I just sell, 9, 12s, and 18s with maybe a 24 every now and then, to, hey, this is a model that I sell a lot of because I sell single zone air handlers now, and 3 ton, 4 ton is very common size. So once those air handlers came out, the focus shifted onto the larger capacities, and we began to notice that they didn't deliver like the smaller capacity. So then the question inevitably comes up, how come the smaller capacities deliver so well, the bigger ones don't? I think at the time, there just wasn't a whole lot of emphasis put on those outdoor models. They weren't popular sizes. However, as the industry has changed and we've gotten new indoor options, they've become more popular. There's more focus on them. So as you will see by the end of this presentation, Carrier's going to address that, but just be aware that that's the case, and also that the 6 through 24 are high heat standard in this single zone model. So, and this high wall unit, again, I focused most of this on the outdoor unit we were just talking about. Again, it's universal. You're going to see this outdoor unit on most of the subsequent slides here, paired with different indoor options. But the high wall has sort of become one of our flagship products, probably for a couple reasons. I think one, all of the comfort features. We already talked about all the comfort features in the Infinity and Evolution equipment. It also exists in the Performance and the Preferred. So you're getting a lot of bang for buck in terms of features. It's very price competitive for a mid-tier high wall, and out performs its competitors in terms of features offered. But it's also I would argue, unless somebody shows me something different, things change every day, but it's the most serviceable wall mount unit on the market currently. So a lot of us have seen this. We've done videos, we've gone around and done road shows. We'll have this unit at the trade show. We've had it for a few years in a row, but I still talk to a lot of people who have yet to see the serviceability of this. So we've got a short video that just shows the removal of the blower wheel, blower motor, and drain pan assembly. And I think I've edited this video a little bit for the sake of time, but I think realistically, 5 minutes is realistic in the field to say you can have this out. Now, this unit that you'll see here doesn't have a drain connections in our lab. So I'll get ahead of that. Somebody will inevitably say, oh, you didn't have to disconnect the drain. There is a quick connect on the drain, makes it very easy to pull on and off. But overall, just a very well-designed unit for service and installation. So I'll show you that, and it's pretty much tool-free. It does require one Phillips head screw, or in the case of the 24,000 BTU and up models, there are 2 Phillips head screws, but for the most part, tool-free. And really what you want to do, I think, everybody does their maintenances a little bit differently, but I think a proper maintenance includes the cleaning of, the filter, obviously, but also the blower wheel. And that's where the majority of kind of the dust and debris are going to collect. And that's when performance on any mini split is degraded pretty significantly. So being able to take the wheel out, not trying to clean it in place with a brush or hang a giant bib underneath of it and spray it while it's hanging over top of a television or a piece of furniture. But rather being able to take it out just like that in a couple minutes, take it either outside to a hose bib or to a utility sink, clean it, have access to the underside of the coil to clean it if it's necessary, and then pop it back together, is great for making money on service, but also great, I think, for in-home sales as well. So we've shown this for a long time. It's been available to us for a good number of years now, but there's still some people that aren't aware of it. So if you weren't, there you are. But we really like this unit, and we've gotten a lot of really positive feedback on this unit from our dealers. Oh, I don't need to watch it again. Sorry. So now we move on to sort of the more standard single zone offerings. Four-way ceiling cassette. All right, not a whole lot of story to tell here. It's not going to differ significantly from anybody else's four-way ceiling cassette. It's got an integrated lift pump. It installs using all thread just like anyone else's. It is 2x2 up to 18,000 BTUs, and then it changes to 3x3. At the 3x3 size, there is an option to duct a single hit off of it to an adjacent bathroom, or maybe a space. If you've got one unit, but it's a relatively large space, you want to distribute the air over that space, you'd have that option on the 3x3s. However, not on the 2x2s. All in all, though, not significantly different than any other four-way cassette you've probably ever seen. Only it's made by Carrier and Bryant, so it's better. But what I really want to illustrate here is what I sort of began to touch on a couple slides back about the larger capacity. So here you can see, and again, this comes out of the price book that you're given, so it kind of makes it pretty easy. Hey, we don't offer this. Where's my 6K ceiling cassette? It's not offered. So I move over to a 9, and you can see it's that same 38 MARB model, in this case a 9, a 12, and 18. And we know already, right, because the outdoor unit is the driver for performance, the indoor unit is just piping and a fan. So how much air it moves and the coil surface area and stuff like that affect performance and efficiency slightly, but the outdoor unit's the main driver for performance and efficiency. So they're still high heat up through 24. Efficiencies on these go down a little bit because that's the true of all cassettes from all manufacturers. The way they move air is just not as free as you would from a high wall. At any rate, what you want to really take note of is that, again, 9 through 24 are all high heat, and they are all the same model that we already looked at in the high wall. However, now again, we're skipping 30 here because the cassette's not offered in a 30, but once we get up to 36 and 48, we can see the cassette is offered in those sizes. It changes to a different outdoor model. It changes to the 38 MBR CQ 36 and 48. And that's considered, or it's billed, sort of, it's not really considered, I guess, but it's billed by carriers, their light commercial unit. We don't, again, if we go back and say, you know, to probably the inception of design for these models, that makes sense, right? We would say, hey, the 6 through 24 is a residential product. We want it to be high heat. Nobody is using 4-ton ceiling cassettes in residential applications. That's a commercial product, so we call it a light commercial unit. However, that's changed again as sort of the market has changed and the indoor options have changed. The way people sell and apply these products has changed. We really do use these more for residential applications at this point than light commercial applications. So we're going to keep looking at this and talking about it because it's leading somewhere, I promise. But just be aware that there is a outdoor model change at the 3, the 4, and when there is a 5-ton option. There's not on this cassette, but there are in some other indoor options at the 5-ton capacity as well. And I take this opportunity to point something out, and some of us maybe have fallen into this trap. So I show our current model outdoor unit here, the residential one, the 38 MARB, and you can see as it goes across, it goes up in capacity all the way to 36, and then I show you your indoor options that can get connected to it. And then over here, I show you the current light commercial outdoor unit. It runs 36 through 58, and I show you the indoor options that can be connected to it. This is pretty straightforward. It would be really simple and straightforward if not for the fact that there's an overlap that occurs here at the 3-ton model. So the 30, what the pitfall that some people make is that they'll take a 3-ton cassette. I'll stick with the cassette. Now this is not a realistic one, but since we just looked at the cassette, right? Hey, I want to use a 3-ton cassette, but maybe they'll accidentally order the 38 MARBQ 36. Well, really this unit only exists to facilitate a 3-ton wall mount unit. You can see it's not compatible with any other indoor options. If we want the other indoor options, we go to this 36. Okay, so that's the ducted, the ceiling cassette, the floor console, and the air handlers. And the air handlers is where this mistake is getting made. Okay, so be aware that these air handlers that we're going to talk about a little bit later at the 3-ton and up are compatible with the 38 MBR CQ outdoor unit, not the MARB. They will not work. Okay, so this is, again, if this just picked up here and moved on, I have a typo there. That would make perfect sense. But the fact that there's some overlap here has created some confusion. So I just wanted to point that out. Looking at the floor console now, it did get redesigned about a year ago. The only one that received the redesign was the 12. And again, you can see we don't currently offer it in a 6 or a 9. It comes in 12, 18, and 24. We don't offer it in a 30, but we then offer it with a 36, a 48, and a 58. Again, the 3, the 4, and the 5-ton are compatible with the 38 MBR CQ, like commercial outdoor unit. Something that's worth noting that's becoming more popular, we've seen a lot of jobs go in like this and more people showing interest in it, is that the 18, the 24, the 36, the 48, and the 58 all double as under ceiling options. Meaning that they can be hung, if you look at the orientation of the unit in this picture and call that vertical, I guess, if it can be laid on its side and hung up against the ceiling in a horizontal, in some kind of horizontal configuration. So that's popular for like large spaces, like basements of churches, social halls, like VFWs, bars. That was something that commercial guys have been cued into for a long time, but for whatever reason, residential guys aren't. It's also a good one for like hallways and, again, churches, schools, community centers where there's a narrow hallway that you don't want to put a high wall on because it's just going to blow, right? Maybe you have a 35-foot hallway. It's 8 feet wide. You don't want to put it on a wall that's going to blow 8 feet. However, there's no room above the door or whatever, right, to put a wall mount unit to throw the length of the hallway. You can mount these under ceiling. They work for those applications too. So just be aware that the 18, the 24, the 3, the 4, and the 5-ton do mount under ceiling. That's become a pretty popular option for guys. And it's somewhat unique to this. A lot of manufacturers offer both, but ours simply is the same model. You just flip it on its side to install it that way. And it's got hanging brackets. You just hang it with all thread. We've got a concealed ducted unit as well. As a matter of fact, we have 2 concealed ducted units, and the question has come up. We've got a high static unit, and then we've got whatever you want to call this one, regular, or what some people would call low static. Again, the 9, the 12, 18, 24 all match with the MARB, but the 3, the 4, and the 5 match with the MBRC. So I do want to talk a little bit about the high static versus the regular static. This is a polarizing unit. Some people hate these units. Some people really like these units. We've sold a lot. Like they've kind of taken off for us. Not only in new construction, which has been big, like multifamily new construction, but we sell a lot of them to residential dealers that are doing multi-zone add-on cooling type jobs as well. So it does have a built-in lift pump. Built-in is, I'm being a little bit liberal with that phrase, and I'm going to make this point because this call comes in all the time. It is attached to the side of the unit. It's not built in. So this picture is actually not showing the pump. The pump would be connected to the side of the unit. On some models, depending on capacity, it comes already connected to the side of the unit, and on other models, it comes in the box with the unit. So integrated or built in is not totally accurate. In some cases, it's already connected. In other cases, it comes as basically an accessory in the box. You can opt to gravity drain it if you want to as well. It has a rotatable return air inlet, meaning that, well, 2 things. One, in this picture, the return air inlet is on the butt end of this unit. It can be moved and swapped with this plate to be on the bottom. And then from either position, it can be rotated so that the filter would either pull up or down from the back or forward or back from the bottom. Guys find success with this because it reduces the number of required indoor unit connections. So they'll use this to hit a couple small spaces. They might hit it like a guest room, a bathroom, and a hallway, right? So, or 2 small rooms. So instead of putting a high wall in both of those rooms, they'll use one of these. So they reduce the number of ports required on their outdoor unit. One of the problems that we see with people's designs a lot of times is that they go into a house that only has a 2-ton load, but they put a 4-ton outdoor unit on it because they want to put a high wall in every room. This helps alleviate that. Also helps hit common areas, which again, if you put a high wall in every room, there's nothing in the bathroom. You're putting a piece of electric baseboard or something like that. There's nothing in the hallway. This is a good solution for those common areas, but also reduces the ports. And that saves money on the job. The cost between a 4-ton unit that has 5 ports and a 2.5-ton unit that has 4 ports is significant. And if they only need 2 tons of cooling or 2.5 tons of cooling, you're talking about a couple $1,000 probably potentially just in equipment costs on that job. So, it also, I think I have a picture, installs vertically. So without really any special consideration, I can take this unit and stand it up like that, and now it's a vertical unit. So installations like this have become popular. Putting it where a radiator used to sit has become popular. Installing them behind knee walls is popular. We've got guys that will keep hot water heat, but they'll remove one of the radiators from a room and put this in instead. So if you have a large living room, maybe it's got 2 or 3 radiators in it, they will remove one of those radiators from the system and put this in. So this unit might not heat that whole room by itself, but it will make up and heat what was lost from the removal of the single radiator. It can then be recessed or put back into the spot where the radiator was with the radiator cover over it. Guys recess them in walls. Some new construction even will do builds in anticipation of recessing them in. Churches like these, they'll recess them oftentimes underneath. They've got very deep window wells in the sanctuaries. They'll open that cavity up, put it in there, and then cut linear diffuser so that it maintains a clean look in the church. So extremely versatile. A lot of guys are kind of cued into these, and we've seen the sales go way up. I'm going to speak to one of the questions that comes up regularly on this, though, and hopefully I did an okay job with my example here, but this is now offered. It used to only come in one flavor. Now it's offered in high static as well. The high static, and I think, Ethan, you can tell me if I'm right or wrong here, but the high static is really, it's not there for ductwork. And I'll get into some of the concerns about ductwork here in just a second, but it's so that you can put a higher resistance filter on this unit. So you can put a HEPA filter or a April Air or something like that onto the bottom of this unit, and it still have the static capability to move the air. That's what the high static unit is for. The high static unit is not for putting more ductwork on these systems. As a matter of fact, almost every time I talk to somebody, and this was my perception of it as well, was that, and we've done this to ourselves by calling these low static units for so long. So it's a low static unit. That means it can't handle static pressure. So usually when something can't handle static pressure and it's not delivering air, what we think of, and we're all versed in residential application, right? So we think of a gas furnace or a unitary air handler. They have a static pressure rating. In the case of the gas furnace, it's 0.5. In the case of the air handler, it's 0.3. And what we say when we say, oh, it's too much static or can't handle the static, is that our duct system is too restrictive, right? I put a coil on that furnace. I put a filter on that furnace. I put 250 foot of linear equivalent ducts and fittings onto that furnace. And now the static pressure, let's call it a 3-ton drive. I'm running 1200 CFM and I read the static pressure and it's 0.8. Well, that exceeds its rating. And that means that delivered airflow goes down, right? That's the paradigm that we think in when we talk about static. So when we call these low static units, what we're doing, I think a lot of us are doing, everyone I've talked to is doing, is they're taking that understanding, they're applying it to this unit. So they're going, that's a low static unit. It can't handle static. If I apply too much static to it, it's just going to bog the motor down. It's not going to deliver. So I want to unpack that real quickly for those of you guys that, again, a lot of people we've had these conversations. They're cued in on these units. They love them, but a lot of people still have a lot of apprehension about them. So first off, we look at the static pressure rating for these units. The small ones, and I apologize, I don't have the capacities here, but I believe this is a 9, a 12, an 18, and a 24. So the 9 and the 12 have 0.2. Okay, that's kind of low, but consider that a residential air handler, a 5-ton residential air handler, 3, 4, it's the same across the board, are 0.3. So it's only slightly less than a full-size residential air handler. And then you can see once you get up to the 18s and up, it's actually more than a residential air handler. So could this handle the same? We got to be careful with our wording. Could this handle the same duct system in terms of imposed static pressure as a unitary air handler? Yeah, these could, right? All of these models are better than a unitary air handler in terms of their ability to deliver airflow under imposed static pressure. What happens with these guys is not that we get these calls all the time, and if anybody, you talk to anybody in tech support, they'll tell you, right? Oh, this thing is not, I put this concealed ducted unit up in the attic. There's no air coming out of it. It's too much duct work. Somebody came out and told me even maybe it's too much duct work. It can't handle the static pressure. But then, and I've done this myself in the field years ago and kind of made me look like an ass, but also reevaluate what I thought I knew was that, and I'm telling this guy in the field the same thing that everybody's told everybody forever. It can't handle that much ductwork. The static is too high. Measure the static and tell me what it is, or I'll go out and I'll measure it for you. And guess what the static is? 0.05. It's nothing. There's no static in it. But it's not delivering air. So the issue is not that the stat, right? It should, we see it's, even this guy's rated at 0.2. If I measure 0.05, that's way less than 0.2. It should be able to deliver the air. Why isn't it? So that's what I want to point out here. And I'm going to use this I'm going to try to use this 12K unit as an example. Look, nominally, it delivers 397 CFM on high. Okay, so that's 400 CFM. It's a 1-ton unit, delivers 400 CFM. That's in line with what we think about when we think about nominal airflow for air conditioning. And I apologize. Up here, I used a 2-ton example, but let's stick with the 2-ton example. So if I'm delivering, oh no, I'm not. I'm confused myself. It is 4. So here's my CFM 400. I set it to 1-inch static, right? This is not saying this is the right way to do it, but this is the way lots of guys do it, and it's at least a jumping off point. I say I want 400 CFM, right? Here's the system I selected. It moves 400 CFM. I need to design a duct system for it. So 400 CFM at 1/10 of an inch of static. I don't have the duct size referenced on here, right? But it'll tell me a duct size. And that duct size is going to deliver 400 CFM while imposing 1/10 of 1 inch of static per 100 linear or 100 equivalent linear feet. And it's going to deliver the air at 800 feet per minute, which is, if we look at manual D, right in the sweet spot. Somebody here, I'm sure, is better at duct design than me, but I'm pretty sure like between 700 and 900 feet per minute is what we want in our supply trunk. So that's perfect. Okay. So based off of this, I like what I see. It jives with my number down here. I go ahead and I design that duct system and I install it. And then I call Pierce Phelps, and then Austin comes out and he looks at the duct system. And he goes, "Oh, this is not going to work." Right. And we think, oh, it's because the duct system it's imposing too much static pressure on it. Well, no, it's not. You designed it to only impose 1/10 of an inch. I mean, unless you have 800 feet or something, you're good. So why isn't it delivering air like it should? And again, if we go back to that paradigm or that, that model that we think of when we think of units that can't deliver against static, we think the static's too high. I've imposed too much static on it. Well, look what this unit is doing though. I designed it at 400 CFM. Frankly, when it's running 400 CFM, this duct system is going to work great. Unfortunately, what's going to happen is the same thing that happens with a wall mount unit or a floor console unit. And I say wall mount because we can all relate to this, right? When we first finish our installation, it's 85 degrees in the house. We turn the cooling on. The thing is ripping air. It's blowing it all the way across the room. I spec'd it out. It says it has a throw of 17 feet, and it's throwing 17 feet. But then as it gets closer to set point, what happens to the airflow out of my wall mount unit? Goes down, right? Now it's only throwing 5 or 7 feet because it's close to set point. The capacity has changed. The airflow has changed. These ducted units work the same way. So as it gets close to set point, now it's only trying to move 200 CFM. It's moving basically 50% of the air I designed it for. So now it's moving 200 CFM. Look how much static is imposed in that duct system. None, right? Remember I said you're going to read like 0.05? According to this, you're going to read even less than that. So you're going to read 0.03, and my velocity is now well below my recommended duct velocity, right? This is like what I want across a filter and a return, not in my supply. So this air never even escapes the duct system. It doesn't even make it out into the space. And so we go, oh man, it's moving no air. It's because it's a low static unit. It can't handle this duct system. The duct system is not too restrictive. It's not because this unit is low static. The duct system is frankly way too big, and you're not building any static to push the air out. Okay, so that question comes up all the time, and people hate these units because they think they can't handle ductwork because the static is low, because we call them low static units. They can handle ductwork just fine. We just have to make sure that we design it right. Second misconception, I just want to make sure you don't need to buy a high stat. If you bought a high static unit, right? If I bought a high static unit and now this number said 0.8, 0.6 instead of 0.2, is that going to change when I install the same system? Is it going to change anything? No, I'm still going to have a stat on low. I'm still going to move 200 CFM at less than 1/10 of an inch of static. Still not going to blow the air. So we don't need a high static unit to make these work. In fact, it's still not going to work. So there's multiple ways to get these to deliver airflow. One, if I have this set to run 400 CFM constantly, then that duct system will work as designed. It's only when it modulates down. So I could prevent it from modulating down. That would be one, I would call that a Band-Aid. That's an after the fact solution. But a design solution is one, a lot of you guys have seen this or heard this. We just want to build a plenum off of the unit, and we want to take the runs off of the end of that plenum, off of what would be conventionally referred to as the end cap. That way you don't need you're not relying on pressurization of the ductwork at all. You're just facilitating the air coming out of the unit into the space. Or if we do want to use a duct system because those runs are going to be long, and you can use flex, you know, I've seen people, oh, don't use flex. They're the same people that say you need a high static unit. You can absolutely use flex, just have to use it right. But if we need a longer run, trying to use this system, and it needs to go all the way down to the extremity of the space, I can design a duct system as well using this method, but I just need to strike a balance, right? I cannot just plug in 400 CFM and run with it. I have to strike a balance where I'm going to deliver the velocity I need at 200 CFM, but not exceed the static pressure rating at 400 CFM. So there's some design considerations there, but I did want to take a little bit of time to talk about that because it is a super common misconception. A lot of people do not use these units or are turned off of these units. They've been burned by them because they didn't deliver airflow. And we get a lot of questions, oh, I need the high static unit. You only need the high static unit if you're trying to put a massive filter on it. As I understand, Ethan, you can speak to this maybe a little bit later, but as I understand, that was for code in like California or something. So we don't currently stock the high static unit. We can bring it in for specific jobs, but this will deliver the air that you need if designed right.
If I can just jump in there for you,
Yeah.
Austin, you hit that nail on the head, and thank you. You do a great job of explaining it. In my opinion, the only advantage in our market of the high static at the 9 and the 12 is that on the low static, we specifically say in install manuals, do not do multiple rooms. And that's because there's a plastic housing basically, so it doesn't meet UL code. The high static, it's a metal, so we do not have that restriction in the manual, but you're not going to be able to do very many multiple rooms with a 9 and a 12 anyway.
Right.
So it's not a huge issue around here.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. We also have, as of last year, a linear cassette. Comes in 9, 12, 8. 6, 9, 12, and 18. I always confuse myself with that. And I confuse myself with it because we actually only sell two models. We sell a 9 and an 18. However, each of them are equipped with a dip switch that allows you to toggle between a 9 and a 12,000 BTU capacity. Or I'm sorry, a 6 or a 9. In the case of the 9, the dip switch will configure it for either 9 or 6. And in the case of the 18, the dip switch will configure it for either 12 or 18. They all are the same size. Another question that comes up quite a bit, and actually I should probably add it to the book, is it does come with the grill in the box. So the grill does not have to be ordered separately. We've been conditioned to order the grills separately with the 4-way cassettes. This one comes in the box. As a result, the box is fairly large, but the grill does come with it. It also comes with a wired controller. And it has a built-in disconnect. So you land your wires, and there's essentially a breaker there that can be used to toggle power on and off. It's pretty thin relative to its counterparts in the field. So we know some other manufacturers that offer these. This one, I will get the exact image, just slightly over 13 inches, like 13 and I think
13.19.
yeah, so less than a quarter of an inch over 13 inches, which means that it is going to fit in your most base spaces without too much concern. It's got 2 mounting options, which I'll show you here. It has a flush mount option, which I like, but of course your bay has to be exactly right. But frankly, I would probably pack the bay out before I and use this mounting method before I used the. I apologize. These animation before I use this method, but either, this is the traditional method. This is what our competition uses. We offer that as well, but I think the flush mount is pretty nice. And it's serviceable, excuse me, from the bottom. So you can see that you've got access to the electrical connections, drain and refrigeration connections, as well as, doesn't show it in this animation, but you also have access to the coil and the blower from underneath. So a nice little unit. It's kind of a niche application with those, but we do have guys that use them and the feedback has been good. So we've got another webinar in 2 weeks that's going to go over details on our air handler options. It's going to go over some little deeper dive in terms of installation and service and differences between our 2 air handler options. But I do want to mention them both here for the benefit of anybody that might not be familiar. We have the 40 MB AB air handler. This is what I refer to as a ductless air handler. Now, I know that that's oxymoron. Yes, ductwork does connect to it. So it is not literally ductless in the sense that there's no ductwork, but it's ductless in the sense that it connects to an outdoor unit like a ductless system would. And for me, there's 2 pieces of criteria. One, the outdoor unit powers the indoor unit. So the air handler is powered by the outdoor unit. And 2, the refrigerant metering occurs at the outdoor unit. So we run ductless type of line set, and there's no metering device in the indoor unit. So that is what qualifies it as a ductless air handler. It runs 18 through 60,000 BTUs, and the 18, the 24, the 30, and the 36 are multi-zone compatible because it's working off of that same outdoor platform. The MARB, right? 18 is high heat. The 24 is high heat. However, the 30s and up are not high heat. And this is sort of where the shortcomings of those larger light commercial capacities. Again, nobody ever paid a lick of it. Nobody had even heard of a 38 MBRC. We carried the thing for 7 years, and nobody had ever even heard that model number. Now we start selling these larger air handler options. We're becoming more familiar with those models. So that change occurs. And again, I'll highlight something that we already talked about, but this 3-ton air handler goes with the 38 MBRCQ, not the 38 MARBQ. Remember, that's where there's overlap that occurs at the 3-ton capacity. Again, not a lot of focus on these units. And then once we did people did start paying attention, they go, oh, that's only 61, 65% heat. That's really not very good compared to these. So I want to take a second to just unpack this. And I also gotten some questions, and these slides aren't new, but we're going over them again because I continue to get questions about them. A lot of dealers are offering these and they're being very successful with them. And we've got another model that most of you guys are familiar with, the 38 MUR, that they're also offering and being successful. But the question has come up several times. We've got several phone calls where they say, myself or my sales guy, whoever's doing the in-home selling, is struggling to really articulate the value of this system versus my 16 SEER standard system offering. You know, the efficiencies look pretty comparable. So they're not really able to explain to the homeowner what the value of this system is versus the other one, when on paper, if they look at the SEER, the EER, and the HSPF, they don't see significant difference. Of course, that's going to vary based on model and all that. So I just want to take a second to sort of try to illustrate the value that you're getting out of these things. And I have an analogy, and it's probably pretty poor, but hopefully it'll work, or you can come up with your own. First off, we'll just get some of the obvious ones out of the way. It's a much smaller footprint. It's much quieter. And it's inverter driven, right? Meaning that it can ramp up and down, and it can really work to the conditions of the day versus just coming on at one speed, either for more or less time. But the big one is the delivered heat, right? So both of these, let's pretend like I've got a 16 SEER single stage unit on one proposal, and I've got this unit on another proposal. And I'm not even going to split hairs. Let's say that all of their efficiency metrics are exactly the same for hypothetically. They're both 16 SEER. They're both the same EER and HSPF. So the customer is like, I don't understand the difference between these. They look exactly the same in terms of efficiency. Which one is going to save me more money? And that's really the shame of our industry and our efficiency ratings, is that they can look the same on paper, and one is going to cost you significantly more money to operate than the other. So that's a shortfall of the way that we don't do it, but that this equipment gets rated and presented to consumers. So again, it's quiet, it's inverter driven, it's smaller footprint. All those are benefits, but the cost to operate is really the biggest benefit of this unit, high heat or not, versus a conventional offering. And it's just not illustrated well in the efficiency rating. So here we have these two units. This is a two-stage 16 SEER conventional unit. You guys may be familiar with this model number. It's representative of most 16 SEER units out there in terms of its ability to deliver heat. And like most heat pumps, right, as the outdoor temperature goes down, the capacity goes down. So up here at 70 degrees, it's delivering 30-some thousand BTUs of heat. Well, that's great, but we don't need it. At 47, where it's rated, it's basically delivering its nominal 24,000 BTUs of heat. But as the outdoor temperature goes down, and here, I haven't even gone down very far. In this case, I'm only at 18 degrees. This unit, nominally 2-ton, delivers 12,000 BTUs. Whereas our unit, and where I got that number is, we'll go back, 2-ton. I'm sorry, I have a 23 here. This is an old slide, but on max, it delivers 29.7. Let's just say 24 even, since my numbers don't totally jive. It's, even if it were 24, which is not, delivers a little more than 24, it's double the heat output. Okay, so it's delivering twice the amount of heat. So yeah, they're both achieving the same efficiency, but this one's achieving the efficiency while doing more than double the work. Right? It's like saying, hey, I'm looking at two trucks. What are their gas mileage? And they say, oh, well, they both get 24 miles to the gallon. This one got tested with no load going downhill, and this one got tested on an incline pulling a trailer. They both get 24 miles to the gallon. One is clearly doing a lot more work than the others. And in terms of cost to operate, if I'm delivering double the heat at the same efficiency, that's the real driver for cost to operate. Because what that equates to is, how much electric heat do I have do I have to use or not use? A 5 kW electric heat package, this might be hard to believe, but varies in terms of how much heat it will put out based on applied voltage. So roughly 15,000 BTUs of heat out of a 5 kW heat package. So in this case, I got this unit is, yeah, I'm getting 16 SEER, 10 HSPF, whatever, but I'm also running a 5 kW heat package at the same time. That's not factored into that, and you're paying for it. Whereas this unit is like, hey, yeah, I'm getting that efficiency, and you're not running a 5 kW heat package. So there's a tremendous benefit in terms of cost to operate out of these units. Here's the same. This is the 3 ton. So now here's a unit where people say, oh, well, man, that one's not high heat. It's just not as good. It's still delivering 10,000 BTUs more heat at low temperature than its counterpart. So even if the efficiencies are the same and it doesn't say high heat, it's still a significantly better option to the consumer than a conventional unit. And the same story, this is the 4 ton. So again, not high heat, but still delivering almost 12,000 BTUs more heat than a conventional product. So if we weren't familiar with that, I just want to take a second to sort of illustrate and make that point that the efficiencies sadly don't reflect the work being done. I mean, you could literally have a heat pump that delivered 1 BTU at 5 degrees and still had I mean, if it only delivered 1 BTU, it might have great efficiency ratings, but it's not a good, that's not a good consumer choice in terms of cost to operate. So I had gotten several calls where they were sort of having difficulty articulating really what the value here is when oftentimes the efficiencies don't look significantly different. So hopefully that helps out. There's one question here. Is there a op cost program web? I'll let, that's a good question, Ian. I'll let Ethan answer that because I've yet to find one.
At this time, there is not. I've been promised there's something in the works, but I can't tell you that's going to be available in 2 months or in 24 months. But we've been told there's something in the works. It's unfortunately very difficult to do.
That's always been a challenge.
Yeah. But with what Austin's showing here, and you combine that with COP, which is really where COP comes from, doing some hand calculations, you can get relatively close.
Yeah, I mean, what you could say is another way of thinking of it is here is, and I'll just go back to this one because it's the most extreme example, right? But here's 17,000 BTUs more heat. At 5 degrees, my COP on this unit is about 2 to 1. Whereas this 17,000 BTUs of heat on the conventional unit is made up with an electric heat strip, which is 1 to 1. So this 17,000 BTUs that I get out of this ductless heat pump is going to come to me at half the cost that it would out of the conventional unit running the electric heat. It's nice that at 5 degrees, that's basically where we land is 2. We are running a phenomenal special on the 3 and 4 ton versions of these heat pumps. Frankly, we're just overstocked on them. There's no problem with them. They're great. Everybody that's installed one has had great feedback from their consumer and great feedback to us. So we really like them, but we do have a lot of them. So we're running some specials. So be aware of these. I mean, that's your indoor and your outdoor, inverter driven, super quiet. We just saw how much heat it delivers versus a conventional system. The whole package for less than $3,000. Okay. And there's the price for the 4 ton. So be aware of those. That's a great heat pump retrofit option. I got a couple other questions. I'll take a second to. How does the auxiliary heat integrate? Is there a way to stop the blower fan from running in the heating mode when the unit reaches set point? Yeah, Jimmy. Yeah, so the unit, if you're using a 24-volt thermostat, then which this comes out of the box ready to use, the blower turns off when you reach set point. There's no issue there. How does the auxiliary heat integrate? Again, you have the option to use either, and I have some videos on this, and we're going to do another webinar in a couple weeks about these details, but my suggestion with this would always be to use a 24-volt thermostat. It does come with a wired controller, and you do have the option of using either. However, for multiple reasons, I like the 24-volt thermostat. One, it turns the blower off when it hits set point, which is big. Two, it turns off at set point. We all know with ductless equipment, it's inverter, doesn't want to turn off. It likes to hover around set point, might be a degree over, a degree under. That is a lot of times, if we're buying a ductless system, a wall mount unit or something, at this point, most consumers kind of get that. But when we're putting this in as a unitary solution, the end user experience expectation is more in line with a conventional system. So they don't like that necessarily. So having it hit set point and turn off, one, because the fan stops running, but two, because it's hitting an exact set point, provides that sort of end user experience. I think that there's an expectation for. Three, it opens up the option to, of course, use everybody's favorite thermostats, and that provides Wi-Fi and scheduling as well. Not that I'm a big advocate of scheduling on heat pumps, but some people do it. So the 24-volt thermostat, I think, addresses most of your issue. And then you would integrate the auxiliary heat the same way through the thermostat, and that would give you all the control of outdoor unit, balance point, lockout temperature, swing differentials, and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers the question. If not, we do have another, you call me Jimmy, but we also have another webinar that we're going to go in a little bit deeper. Anton asked, could you please explain why you can only use the MAR BQC and not the B with the mini split air handler? I'm going to come back to that one in 1 second. Are you going to cover using these in a hybrid configuration? Yeah, I'll cover it briefly, Brian. Yeah, that's the next. These are the Yes, I'm going to come back to that one, Brian. So real quickly, can I explain again why you can only use the MARB QC? I think these model numbers are a little off, and not the B with the mini split air handler. So I'm going to look at this slide again just to explain this. Here is the, oh, I skipped a slide ahead. So here's the ductless air handlers we're talking about. This one matches with the MARB. This one matches with the MARB. This one is MARB. Now these are MBRC. These are single and multi-zone options. These are single zone only options. We do have a 3-ton multi-zone. It comes up on another slide. Why can't you match them? If I understand the question correctly, I mean the hard reality of why you can't match them is because the wiring does not conform between the two units. There's these units use tray cable, L1, L2, and S, and these units use separate 2-wire communication. So physically, they don't use the same communication protocol or wiring. So they just simply cannot connect them. Why they didn't make them compatible with this, if that's the question, I don't know the answer to that question. I'm going to try to answer your question, Brian, I think in this next slide. And then if I don't, then just tell me and I'll try to address it. So this is our other air handler option, which is the 38 MUR. So, and sometimes in referring to these two different air handler options, it can be a little bit confusing, right? So this is the one we're getting ready to talk about. I refer to this as a 38 MUR. Most of our TMs do as well. They might call it the Murac or the Mura or some other cool, slick name, but it's the same outdoor model all the way across 18 to 60. If we go back to the ducted air handlers, which was the question that Anton had asked about, the outdoor unit changes, right? So I can't refer to this system by its outdoor unit model because that model changes. So we refer to these systems as 40 MBAB systems because that's the indoor air handler model. And we refer to these systems as 38 MUR systems because that's the outdoor unit model. It remains consistent, and you don't have to use the air handler with it, which I think is getting into Brian's question. So real quickly, get a couple things out of the way. These units run 18 through 60,000 BTUs. They are all high heat. So unlike the previous air handler systems we looked at, These are using a dedicated single zone only outdoor unit that provides great efficiency and full heating capacity all the way up to 5 ton at 5 degrees. They have a dedicated air handler, the 40 MUAA. However, they can also be installed with conventional air handlers, high velocity systems, case coils, and furnaces. So they basically, even though this looks like a ductless outdoor unit, it performs like a ductless outdoor unit. It gets applied like it were a heat pump. So anywhere that you would drop a conventional heat pump in on a job, you could drop one of these in. So that could be a dual fuel or hybrid application, or anything else. And the reason that you can do that is because two things. One, this unit is powered separately from its indoor option. So unlike, remember, we qualified those previous air handler systems as being ductless air handlers because they were powered by their outdoor unit, not the case here. The indoor and outdoor unit are powered discretely. And then two, we qualified those previous air handler systems as being ductless units because refrigerant was metered at the outdoor unit and fed to the indoor unit through a line set that had insulation on both lines. This unit does not meter the refrigerant outside. The indoor option meters the refrigerant. In this case, the 40 MUAA has an electronic expansion valve. If you were going to use a cased coil or a unitary air handler, it would work with the native expansion valve. So the expansion valve that came with that piece of equipment. The unit can manage that because it's got a refrigerant management system that basically maintains a suction pressure and superheat. So it's working off of superheat. So it will feed more refrigerant to the indoor metering device or less based off the superheat. So it doesn't have to have a dedicated metering device. It can work with whatever is going on in there. So that was one of the differences. I'm going to check these questions real quick to make sure I'm hitting on. Reversing valve for heat on all, reverse valve for heat on all. Yes. So Ron's question is, does the reversing valve energize in the heating mode? Yes. And that is like a ream or root. We've always said ream root does that. It's kind of backwards from the industry standard, which is to energize in cooling and fail to heat. We energize in heating and fail to cooling. When the 38 MUR, and I'll take a step back, energizing the heating and failing to cooling offers us some unique wiring options when we get into jobs where we might not have all the conductors that we want. I'm not going to unpack that here, but it gives us some nice workarounds when we don't always have all the wires that we want for a heat pump. Again, retrofit. It might have been an air conditioner previously. Next question. So when the 38 MUR outdoor unit goes into defrost, does the 40 MUAA indoor blower shut down? Yes and no, David. So there's not like a relay that hard turns it off, but because the fan speed is tied to the coil temperature, as the coil temperature drops because it's receiving cold refrigerant, the fan speed turns down. And in some cases all the way off. Depends on how far into the defrost cycle you get. Hopefully that answers that question. So he's asking, does the fan turn off and defrost on these? And the answer is not. It doesn't turn off in the same way that a conventional system does, where it basically well, I'm sorry, it does not turn off in a conventional system, does it? It just turns the electric heat on. Yes, the fan sort of turns off, which is different than a conventional system. So these units also use a conventional line set. So that means that you could reuse an existing line set because the refrigerant metering is occurring inside instead of outside, like with a ductless unit. The liquid line is a true liquid line, should be around about ambient temperature, and so does not require any insulation under normal circumstances, right? We might insulate if we're running across a long length across a hot roof or attic or something like that, but the same rules apply as would apply to a unitary system, meaning that it typically won't require insulating. So if you're running a new line set, you would run a conventional line set, but you also have the option of using an existing line set. So that's it. I mean, there's a lot of technical stuff to unpack in terms of installing these. We're not covering that there, but from an application and just performance standpoint, the way I look at this, if you liked the Infinity Green Speed or the Evolution Extreme, these don't deliver on efficiency exactly like they do, but I'm going to say you're going to get like 90% of the performance that you would get out of that unit for a significantly lower cost. So these have become very popular for that reason. We currently offer them exclusively in the high heat, but that may change. Looking forward, we're going to talk about that stuff in a little bit. So that's it. I try to keep it simple with these. This looks like a ductless unit, performs like a ductless unit, applies and installs like a conventional heat pump. So don't get intimidated or think that there's too much to understand with these when it comes time to selling them. If you could sell a heat pump conventionally in an application, you can sell this unit in that application. When it comes to the details of wiring and stuff like that, there's a couple of little differences, but it is not a steep learning curve, and we've got videos and manuals and everything else to help get you through that. So great feedback on these. We've sold a tremendous amount of these, and everybody seems to love them. So if you're not already looking at these, I would suggest that you do. Again, we're not going to spend too much time on this, but I kind of show the same thing at each capacity versus a conventional unit. So again, on 18,000 BTU unit, almost twice the amount of heat. And because these are all high heat units, the story is pretty much the same, right? Double the amount of heat out of the 2-ton as a conventional unit, almost double the amount of heat as out of the 2.5. The 3-ton really performs. It delivers 43,000 BTUs of heat, so huge amount of heat, which is a great because so many unitary heat pumps are 3-ton, and because our heating load is a little bit greater than our cooling load, the ratio of heating to cooling on this 3-ton is really nice. Again, on the 4-ton, pretty much double the amount of heat. So that's a tremendous cost to operate savings to a consumer. I mean, not only is it's not cost prohibitive to get into this equipment. It's not priced so astronomically that it's only reserved for the extremely wealthy or something. Almost anybody it's palatable as an option on a proposal, and the cost to operate is phenomenal. So great unit. Looking at the multi-zone real quickly, not a lot, really nothing has changed with our multi-zone. Most of us are familiar with it. Looks like a question came in. I'll take the time to try to answer it. Reminder to add the filter drive to the not included with the unit. Yes, yeah. So Brian mentions that there's not a filter dryer included with the 38 MUR. It's at your discretion whether you want to install it or not. If you are using best practices and purging with nitrogen, there's an argument that says you don't need a filter dryer. You're pulling a deep vacuum, you're holding at 500 or lower microns, maybe you don't need a filter dryer. Maybe you're in the habit of always installing a filter dryer, in which case absolutely install a filter dryer, but it is not included with the unit. That is correct. So looking at our multi-zone lineup, again, most of us are familiar with it, but for the guys that may not be, we currently run 18, so 1.5 through 4-ton, with the 2, the 2.5, the 3, all being high heat standard, and the 4-ton coming in both standard and high heat options. The 18K, it's a little bit of the black sheep of our multi-zone line, does not come with a high heat option. They all have circuit isolation valves. We already said they all have a base pan heater. They all have a really nice service inquiry. So a lot of times when we're talking to service techs and service managers, they really like that. You're able to just go right to the outdoor unit, and I can look in real time while the unit's operating at everything that's going on. All the sensors, what the coil temperatures are, what's calling, what's not calling, how much they're calling for, how many units are connected, what the compressor target speed is, what the actual speed is. So tremendous amount of insight. You don't need any special tools. It's built right into the board. and it's very easy to use. It's not esoteric. There's not a trillion dip switches. There's one button. You just navigate to the piece of data that you want to look at. Hey, I want to know the indoor temperature for circuit B's coil. That's number 30. I navigate to 30, and it tells me that value. You can see, again, this is in the price book. I give you the models that are multi-zone compatible. But really, and this is just to, I put these together when our air handler became available. So these are a little bit older slides. But really what I want to illustrate, that, we said that the high wall unit was one of sort of the flagship pieces, the Carrier Bryant line. The air handlers, the 40 MBAB air handler, along with the 30 MUR systems, would also probably qualify as sort of a flagship product. But our multi-zones are really, I think, where the dealers get the most value and are able to be the most competitive on their multi-zone jobs, or their cooling jobs in general, because of all the delivered cooling capacity that these things churn out. So without getting too deep into it, almost all of our equipment are over deliver on the multi-zone side in cooling. So this is a 30,000 BTU unit. You can see here it's delivering almost 40,000 BTUs of cooling. And in some configurations, it will deliver up to 41,000 BTUs of cooling. So a 2.5 ton unit that really delivers really on par with most manufacturers' 3.5 ton units. It also has 4 ports, and it's a single fan cabinet. So it's cost effective because it's a single fan cabinet. It delivers up to really almost 3.5 tons worth of cooling. So whereas you're having to quote a 3 or 3.5 from a different manufacturer, you're able to quote this unit, stay very cost competitive, really offer the same amount of ports and the same amount of cooling at a much lower price. You can see the same is true here with the 36. It's delivering 42,000 BTUs of cooling, so a full 1/2 ton more cooling. And I don't think I have a slide for the 2 ton, but the 2 ton also delivers a tremendous amount of cooling. It delivers up to 32,000 BTUs of cooling. So that's a full 1/2 ton capacity more. And those deliveries occur at max design conditions. So it's not like, we're not playing with the numbers to present that information. It's not like, it delivers that on a 75-degree day with an 80-degree set point. It delivers that on a 95-degree day, 70-degree return air, 61 wet bulb. It's delivering under max design conditions. Obviously, design conditions change from one location to another, but for most design conditions, it is delivering that cooling all year round, which means that a 2 ton can be applied as and the way that most dealers at the 2 and the 2.5 are best-selling models. Most dealers that are savvy to this product, been selling for a while, do not sell the 18. They would rather sell the 24, even if an 18 was the appropriate size. The 24 can turn down. The 24 has an additional port for future expansion. The 24 is high heat, and the 24 has a lot of capacity to tap into. Same with the 30. I can get 41,000 BTUs of cooling out at year round. Between the 24 that's going to carry you basically from 18 to 30, and a 30 that's going to carry from 30 to 42, you don't really need many other multi-zone outdoor units on your cooling projects. But you did see that the 3 ton delivers up to 42, and you can see here that the 4 ton delivers up to 54. So they all way over deliver on cooling. In addition to this model I'm showing here is not high heat. It's a regular heat unit, but you can see they're all high heat too. So they deliver their nominal capacity in the heating mode. So tremendous value out of our multi-zone line, a bunch of great features. That is my personal favorite thing about the line. Bill Kelly, Bill, will your side notes be included on the new Ductless price pages coming soon? Thanks. I don't know what you mean by side notes, but if you can put in some details, I'll try to answer. So, and again, for those of us that are new to it and maybe haven't quoted this or just looking at it, it behooves you to know this, because I talk to guys that don't take the time to know it, and they go, oh man, I don't know, it just wasn't really very competitive. They wanted a 3 ton, and I need a 3 ton, so I quoted the 3 ton. Well, the 3 ton is a 2 fan cabinet. it's going to be way more expensive, like probably $1,500 more than a 30. So you could have done that job with a 30. You could have frankly probably done the job with a 24 and saved $1,500 off just off the outdoor unit. So if you're savvy to that, there's tremendous sort of competitive edge in your multi-zone applications. Oh yeah, and David just reminded me that you also have the option to put any wall mount unit you want on these. So we like the preferred performance wall mounts. I think it's tremendous value there, but you could also put a comfort or a legacy on it. If you wanted to, if you had 5 heads, save $100 or so a piece. And the Infinity and Evolution as well, which we have on sale right now. Consummate sales guy. Just showing some more examples of the delivered cooling and some combinations you can get. Again, these are a little bit older. The new iteration of this unit actually delivers about 3,000 BTUs more cooling. And then I want to talk about primary heating on these too, because this is a question that comes up, like a 2-ton unit. I'll use my 2-ton unit as an example. It delivers 32,000 BTUs of cooling and 24,000 BTUs of heating. It delivers its nominal heating, which is great. People ask forever, when are you going to get a high heat 4-ton, which we finally did get. And they said, oh, I can't wait till you get that. We're gonna tackle all of these primary heating jobs with that unit. And a lot of them called me, or I would walk jobs with them and work on designs. And I came to the conclusion, after evaluating my own situation, which I've talked about with some people, I won't go into here, 2 units are better than 1. Okay, so it's way better to have 2 24,000 BTU units than 1 48,000 BTU unit. Why? Well, one, depending, you might actually pay less in outdoor equipment for 2 than you do for 1. If you pay for 2 24K multis versus 1 48K multi, you pay a couple $100 more for the 2. If you go with like a single 24K, like in this example, right? Maybe I want to incorporate an air handler or a large 24K single zone option, and then a multi-zone 24. I still have 4 options inside, but the single zones are less expensive than the multi-zone. So now I'm actually less than a 4-ton multi if I do a single 2-ton and a multi 2-ton. Yeah, you're paying for an extra whip and disconnect and pad, but it's not significant. You're paying for the same amount of line sets either way, same amount of line height, all that good stuff. So besides the cost being comparable, hey, if the cost is the same either way, why would I go one way versus the other? For me, the biggest reason is redundancy. So when you're heating a home solely from a single heat pump, it's better to not have all your eggs in one basket, right? If that heat pump were to fail, you're completely without heat. We all know, we work in this industry. If you're heating your whole home with a gas furnace and it fails, a guy comes, he usually keeps an igniter and a blower motor on his truck, and you'd be up and running the same night or maybe the next day. You got a compressor failure or something on a heat pump, it's more involved, it's more time consuming, it's more costly to make those repairs. You don't want to be without heat for a prolonged period of time. So having 2, significantly better than having 1. There's definitely some value in having redundancy in terms of heating the home. 2, you're going to get better total heating capacity out of 2 than you are out of 1. 3, your turn down is going to be better on 2 smaller ones for cooling than it is heating. The problem with sizing a heat pump for your heating load, if you have a 50,000 BTU heating load and a 30,000 BTU cooling load, or a 2-ton cooling load even, you've got a huge heat pump now that now has to turn way down. In the spring, hey, you've got a 30,000 BTU cooling load on a 100-degree day or a 95-degree day, but what about when it's 80 degrees? Are you going to be overcooling because you have a 4-ton unit and you only need 2 tons of cooling or less than that on that given day? So having 2 systems that have way better turn down on cooling allow you to have the appropriate heating to cooling ratio or turn down ratio. it prevents overheating. We can talk about that in a separate conversation, but they have to send heat, right? Talk about some of it now. I've talked about this to death, but if I have a 4-ton unit and its turn down is only, I don't know what it is off the top of my head. I apologize. 28,000 BTUs. I'm going to make up a number. And my house, it's a day like today, I might only need 15,000 BTUs. What's the unit supposed to do with the other 15,000 BTUs or so right? It has to send it to a different indoor unit. If that's a small bedroom or something like that, it could overheat. Now we have workarounds for that. We've got programming and controls that can address that, but you're going to avoid the issue completely if you go with 2 systems. And then lastly, it offers some better flexibility in terms of your line set run. So you don't have to run all your line sets to a single outdoor unit. You have some versatility or flexibility in terms of where you run your line sets and set your units. And then if you can incorporate an air handler, that helps as well. So I got a couple questions popped up. Or maybe I didn't, sorry. Losing count of the questions here. So those are just some thoughts on multi-zone heating. 2 is better than 1, and actually it's going to be more cost effective, and it's going to be, you're going to provide much more value to your customer doing it that way. You guys just saw all those designs. Those are put together in V-Room or Vroom, as some people call it. It's up for debate. Currently, that is a downloadable app that works on Windows. We've had some problems because a lot of guys use tablets, doesn't work on tablets, and a lot of guys use Apple products, does not work on Apple products. If you do have Windows and you don't have that program and you want to help setting it up and using it, reach out to me. I'm happy to do that for you. However, and Ethan again can talk to the timeline on this, it is moving to a web-based version, and that I'm confident in saying that, right? If it was just the factory telling me they were going to do it, I wouldn't probably even mention it because it could be 6 years from now. But they've already transitioned the VRF side of that software to the web-based software. So the DLS is incoming. Exactly what the timeline is, I'm not sure, but it could be very quickly. Here's a screenshot, though, of the actual web-based one. Again, I'm not going to take you all through it, but if you're familiar with the desktop version, you can see that it's pretty much exactly the same. I go to design conditions, all the same fields. Once I get into the design, it's the same drag and drop, select the units. So it's the same software you're used to. There's no learning curve. The upside is you'll be able to use it from any device where you have some sort of data connection. So I think that'll make it a lot more accessible to a lot of guys. Question from Jim. All right, Jim. Yeah, just email me. My email's at the end of the presentation, but it's add@pierce.com. And we'll get you set up with that. And then in the future, currently Dustin, our VRF guy, is in charge of sending whatever you want to call it, whether it's a license or an access code to the web-based one. I'm going to guess that'll probably be me on the Ductless side. So I'll just send those out to you. And it's just like a code that you punch the code in and you have access from there forward. So it's actually a little bit easier than having to download it. All right, we're going to talk now about the R454B transition. So, and Ethan, you can maybe chime in on some of this too. But the EPA ruling is that 410A equipment, there's a cutoff for manufacturing / importing, which is the end of this year, December 31st of 2024. Carrier either has to have manufactured its last piece of 410A equipment by then, or if we're importing it, it needs to have landed stateside before December 31st, 2024. No new equipment may pop into existence in the United States that holds 410A refrigerant after December 31st, 2024. We can then sell 410A equipment for 1 full year after that. So all the way up through December 31st of 2025. So that's the EPA's ruling. From Carrier and Pierce Phelps's perspective, our and these are somewhat fluid, but seems to be fairly fixed, is that the final date for our equipment orders on Ductless for 410A equipment is June 24th. So maybe June, certainly, whether it's the 24th exactly, I'm not sure. And that also marks the day that we are first able to place our orders for the R454B equipment. So that's the cutoff date for the old equipment, and that's when we may begin ordering the new equipment.
So actually, that's actually already changed a little bit, Austin. You'll be, it looks like, able to start having stuff show up as early as June or July now, if you guys so just want that.
Well, okay, so when can we order first then?
It looks like going to be able to start placing orders at this point sometime in April or May from
Okay. I was gonna
domestic.
say it needs to be, if with your
Yeah,
guys' times,
from,
it'll have
from
to be May
domestic.
before if we
It's
want to get it
still
out of June.
June, July for Container Direct. But that's going to
Right.
probably get moved. That's probably going to get moved up as well, so that you have the opportunity should you want to take it.
So again, guys, it's all pretty fluid, but we're estimating, and again, as you saw, it changes. But we're anticipating having this equipment in inventory by fall. And that means that we're going to have both 410A and 454B products available at the same time. And we wanted to do that because there's, we think that it benefits you as a dealer to have access to both. There will be, just like on the unitary side, just like every other manufacturer, a cost associated with the new equipment, right? And depending on what the economy's like and what you're consuming, what the situation with the specific consumer is, it may be a benefit to be able to sell 410A equipment at a lower price. Some people will take the route of selling exclusively new equipment on the fact that 410A is obsolete and you want to get into this. Some people take the route of selling 410A because maybe they're more comfortable with it. They're confident that the refrigerant's going to remain affordable for a while. It's going to have a better price point, undoubtedly. So there will be, and of course there will be a mix of the two, probably from all the dealers. So we wanted to be able to provide you both and the 410A as long as possible. How long we'll be able to provide that 2025 remains to be seen, but it's our intention to try. And then we're going to have a fall webinar that will confirm more details about the equipment, which we are going to get into a little bit here in just a minute. And then our inventory situation with it as well. So we'll have updates on that as we go through the transition. I think a question popped up. I'll try to take right now. Oh, the presidential election have any impact on this new refrigerant change? Oh, your guess is as good as mine. It'll certainly probably have an impact on the economy, which may dictate what you do or don't offer. So real quickly, here's our current product lineup, and it doesn't, this is what we just reviewed. So again, if we look at the entry tier, and guys, we stopped, by the way, stocking cooling only units. There's no cost benefit to having a cooling only unit. If they want a cooling only unit, just buy a heat pump and don't set it to heat. So you can see that the entry tier, a single zone high wall product, and you can see the infinity tier, a single zone high wall product, just like we said at the beginning of this presentation. You can see the mid tier extremely crowded with all of the options. This is what we all talked about. So just a quick recap so that we have some framework for the changes that we're going to see on the next slide. Here was the 38 MARB, right? Ran 6 through 36, single zone. Here was that light commercial, 38 MBRC, 36 through 58. Who were our multi-zone units. Some were standard heat only, like the 18 we mentioned. Some were high heat only, like the 24, 30, and for Pierce Phelps, 36. We don't carry the standard heat 36. And some came in both. For us, that was only the 4-ton. And then here are the 38 MURs or the Muras or the Murax or whatever you want to call it. And as I mentioned when we talked about these products, we only currently stock the high heat version, but they were available in both standard and high heat. So this was the product. This is what we just spent a good bit of time reviewing. This is what the product line is going to look like with the new 454B refrigerant. Now, it looks like a lot of changes. I think most of them are for the better. So, and some of this is all subject to change, but this is what we think we know currently. So we're gonna try to keep you guys as informed as possible. So where to even begin with this? So a lot of the product does not change. It's just being re-tiered, right? So some of it's not that the product changed. It just kind of it was a performance unit. Now it's an infinity unit. So I'll start with the single zone 38 MUR. The single zone 38 MUR up to 24,000 BTUs was high heat. Essentially, that 38 MARB unit is now an infinity unit. Single zone 38 MARB was an infinity unit, or it was a performance unit, now becomes an infinity unit. It gets a couple of changes. It gets a 33 added to it, right? So they got rid of the 30 and put in a 33, and all of these capacities will be high heat. So 6 through 33 will all be high heat. We'll continue to have the same capacities that we had before in the mid-tier. They'll simply be standard heat now. So now you'll have an option of standard or high heat for your single zone units. The same is true for the light commercial. So the light commercial that we saw, oh man, the heating capacities drop off on those light commercials. These will essentially be the same light commercials that you sold, the 38 MBRCs, and we will have high heat versions of them available, branded as Infinity and Evolution. From my perspective, a good thing is that there are no new the indoor options essentially stay the same. They'll get a different model number, but they'll be the same options. There's not Infinity Performance and Infinity Evolution, Preferred Performance, and Legacy Comfort. Right? We still have that universal aspect to our indoor options. But essentially, all of our single zone units will be available in both high heat and standard heat flavors. The same is going to be true. Now, there are some nuances here with capacities that we'll unpack and understand better as we get more information. So the same is true of the multi-zone. Now, again, this was already somewhat true of the multi-zone. We had some that were available in both. We had some that were only high heat and some that were standard. Now, we have every offering, including a new 5-ton unit available in high heat, and then we have every offering available in standard heat. Additionally, I was told, we'll see if this comes to fruition, each capacity is to receive an additional port. So the 18K unit used to be 2-port, it'll be 3. The 2-ton was a 3, now it'll be 4. The 30 was a 4, now it'll be 5, and so on down the line. So that's exciting. Again, so not a whole lot of difference here. This actually, I think, helps us quite a bit because it was sort of like, some guys had, I live and breathe this, but some guys had a lot of trouble remembering which models were high heat and which models were not high heat. So that'll be real straightforward. You'll have a high heat and a standard heat of each one. Over here, sort of the same thing. Some were high heat, some were standard heat. Now it's clearly delineated. You can have it in both flavors. The nice thing is I'm told that these are essential from a pricing perspective. There's not going to be a premium price attached to the fact that they moved these up to the infinity tier. If it was high heat in the performance and preferred tier, and they just bumped it up and now they started calling it an evolution or infinity, you're paying the same price for it. So there's not going to be a crazy premium attached to it just because they rebranded the tiering of it. And then on the 38 MURs, which are currently both the standard and high heat versions are considered preferred and performance products. They're going to leave the standard heat and the preferred and performance tier. and then they're going to move the high heat up and rebrand it as Infinity and Evolution. Along with some changes to this, and the changes, Ethan, you'll have to help me out, but I believe that the 3 and the 4-ton models of the high heat MUR will be shrunk down to single fan cabinets only, which will hopefully have some cost benefit, but also a little bit more palatable on the outside of the house as we've.
That and that's also the case in the multi-zone. But actually,
Oh, thank you.
besides the cost benefit, the real home run to me on that, and again, this based on preliminary data, we don't have the hard data out. Right now, the 3-ton MURA requires a 50 amp breaker. I'm being told that the new version in the high heat will go down to a 30 amp breaker.
That will be phenomenal.
That'll be huge. That's a huge home run.
Yeah. So there again, guys, there's a lot of there's a lot of details we don't totally have. So once we have more of those details in hand and we really have it ironed out, we'll represent this in detail. I apologize. You'll probably have to listen to me for another 2 hours. But we'll represent this in detail and try to answer any questions and really have it squared away. Another one of the ones I noticed that I was excited about was we are getting a 9,000, getting a 16 as well, but I'm more excited about the fact that we will get a 9,000 BTU floor console. So that was another one that I noticed, along with the ports on this. So it's a lot to sort of look at, but I think once the dust settles and we have a chance to look at everything, we can present it to you guys in a way that's sort of digestible. And, like we've done with this line all along, we don't just simply buy everything that Carrier makes and bring it in and sell it. We do our best to sort of curate the line to fit your needs and to not make it overwhelming and have too many options and introduce the potential for lots of mistakes to be made and stuff like that. So we'll try to do the same with this. We'll kind of compare and contrast the performance of all the models, see which ones it makes sense to bring in, see which ones really don't make any sense. And again, try to distill it down to what's really going to make the most sense for you guys to be successful with, have what you need, but also not be overwhelmed with too many options. So we've always tried to do that, and we'll continue to do that. And so I'm looking forward to getting some more information, and we'll put another webinar together.
Before you move on that, Austin, if you don't mind, just want to point out a couple other things that I'm excited about with these, in particular on the crossover. You can see the air handler portion, they look different because they will be different models this time. And that's because the one that's going to be in the high tier is going to be easily changed between 115 volts and 230 volts. Not 100% sure if it's a dip switch or if it's just going to be an automatic sensor. It's also going to have single point power for the electric key kits.
That's good.
Yeah, the mid tier is going to be convertible between 115 and 130, but it's going to be some wiring changes you'll have to do in the field. But it will also supposedly be single point power for the electric key kits.
Well, the single point will be big. Yeah, we'll appreciate that. I had a couple questions come in. One, do we get a copy of the PowerPoint presentation? Yes, we send that out. We have your email on file. We send an email out to everybody that attended. And there's a recording of this webinar as well. Will the Infinity still allow for 24-volt thermostat? I don't know which product Ron, that you're referring to specifically. I'm guessing you're referring to the air handler options, and yes, they'll continue to offer 24, which is one of the things that I have found, and I almost take it for granted. There's other manufacturers that offer these, and they're great products. I mean, I think we can probably all see or agree that the future of heat pumps is probably moving away from unitary and towards ductless, for whole home heat pump type jobs. And there's a lot of units on the market, but one of the things that is, I sometimes take for granted, I forget that we're like the only ones that use 24-volt thermostat out of the box and do it well. So everybody else is using a proprietary control. I don't care how good that proprietary control is. None of them are as good as the versatility that you get with a 24-volt thermostat. And again, we talked about earlier about the ability to sort of meet the homeowner's expectations in terms of end user experience. So we sometimes take that for granted, but I think that's huge. Yes, there are some of the other manufacturers allow for a 24-volt interface. One, you have to buy that and install it. And then two, I'll talk about this more in the air handler thing, but those really sort of derate the performance and dumb those units down to single or preferably two-stage systems. They're inverter driven, but they only operate at 2 speeds effectively. Whereas ours still maintain full modulation. So it oftentimes is like kind of overlooked or taken for granted, but the fact that we are out of the box ready with these types of systems to provide 24-volt control and all that entails is a pretty big deal. Do any of these multi-zones require branch boxes? No, all of our units are, I'm sorry if I didn't mention this specifically earlier, but all of our units are port style. So every once in a blue moon, there's an advantage to having a branch box. I think most of the time, not all the time, but most of the time, a branch box is considered a hindrance. It's a unwanted extra cost on a job. A lot of times people are hammer drilling or penetrating into a house to connect to a branch box and then penetrating back out of the house to run their line sets. So it's adding a lot of time and cost to jobs where it's typically not wanted. Now, when you need it, it's great to have. But again, some of that can be, if you do need it, it's usually on larger systems, and that can be addressed by using 2 outdoor units like we talked about earlier. So no. And a lot of, talking about one manufacturer here specifically, their port style units, the capacity degrade is significant, and their cooling capacity when you use their port style units. You almost have to use a branch box unit to get the full benefit or capacity out of their equipment. So that's not the case with ours, as you guys saw in the designs I threw up there. We're delivering full heating, cooling capacity without the need for a branch box. Ducted, yes. Okay, Ron. So yeah, I think I answered your question. Then David has something.
And just, the other nice thing on the multi-heads is the ability to isolate each port.
Absolutely.
So that makes turning up and troubleshooting on the multi-heads much easier, simpler than probably any other multi-head system.
And one that comes up about that too a lot is I get this question a lot, like, and again, it's why a lot of people install the 2-ton multi over the 18 is they say, well, I like the option, or the homeowner likes the option of having being able to put a unit on in the future. If they don't have isolation ports, maybe I'm wrong, I've been out of the field for a little while, but I'm pretty sure you've got to, at the very least, you have to close and recover all of the line sets, right? So you've got to close the outdoor unit to all of the existing line set, and you've got to recover everything out of, at minimum, the existing line set. If you don't have that, you might have to recover the whole system. I'm not sure, because it depends on the model. Whereas ours, you can, because each port is isolated, I don't have to recover anything when I go to add a unit to the system. As a matter of fact, I don't even need to turn the system off. I can install a new line set, pressure test, vacuum it, if need be, weigh refrigerant into it, and then open that port, all while the unit remains in operation. The only thing I would need to turn the unit off would be to make the electrical connection for that head. So people do like that. I think it is now up. I think we've kind of talked this. This just further illustrates some of the changes. There are some model number changes, but you can see here's our 38 MARB. Just highlight the models that we're maybe familiar with here. Here's our current preferred and performance MARB. I do have this in the Bryant slide here later. I'll do Bryant since I've probably shown some bias towards Carrier up to this point. So here's the 38 MARB single zone heat pump. It was a preferred unit. It's now going to be called a 37 MAHAQ. It's a evolution. It's the same unit, but it's an evolution now. Here is the 38 MGHB. So that was the high heat multi-zone. That becomes a Infinity or Evolution product. the 37 MGHA, whereas the RBs, which were standard heat multi-zones, will continue to be in the preferred and performance categories of standard heat multi. Here's the light commercial 38 MB. So these are all models we've talked about at length today. The 38 MBR CQ, light commercial unit, it was not high heat. It stays in the preferred and performance category. And then they have a new light commercial unit that is high heat. So again, essentially this is all to say that I think the Reader's Digest on this is that they've improved several things. They've improved the cabinet dimensions, they've improved the ports on the multi-zone, and they've improved some of the capacity offerings on certain units. And then they have, where it had not already existed, split them into both standard and high heat and tiered them as Infinity Evolution for high heat and preferred performance for standard heat. So it's not going to be insurmountable for us to get our arms around this, but we are waiting for a little bit more, a few more details before we totally put it out there and commit it to memory, I guess. The real change here for us in terms of model numbers is our series outdoor units were 38s. Now they're 37s. Why you would go backwards, I don't know, Ethan. Why did we go backwards? And then on the
It was actually because of commercial stuff.
I was gonna say there's a 39 series commercial split, right?
Correct.
So
Yep.
I knew the answer to that. So and then on the 40s, we went, oh, excuse me. On the 40, it's now a 45. The series change, we had, in the 38s and the 40s, we were up to C's and B's, depending on the specific model line. But now they're resetting us back at A's. So they didn't highlight that, but we're back to A's on the series. Everything else kind of stays the same. Q still indicates heat pump. We still got a capacity. And then the letter after the capacity, for those of you guys that didn't know, on both single and multi indicates the number of port connections that you have. So preview of what we're going to see in terms of model number changes. I know we were just getting our arms around the current model numbers. Now I am going to, looks like one more question came in, but then I'm going to give it over to Ethan. Are we going to see IntelliSense in the 38 MUR systems? That'd be a question for Ethan. My guess is no.
So we are actually actively working on IntelliSense with a number of the units. So not just the 38 MURA, but with a number. I don't have specifics. My gut is it's going to be the high tier product, but it is actively in the works. Don't lock me to a time because, like Austin said, we hear it all the time. But I'm hearing possibly by year end. But don't lock me into that.
This is you, Ethan.
Yeah. Do I have control? I don't think I have control.
No, I have it. You want next slide?
Only
Sorry.
okay. So going to cover a little bit of the Inflation Reduction Act and some local things. There's always questions. So we're going to get into it again. For those of you who don't know me, some of you do. I'm Ethan Hoberman. I'm the Ductless regional sales manager. We're all on the same team. So if you have questions, speak with your TM, speak with Austin, David. You can grab me, whatever. We're all here to work together. So let's go into the first slide. We know electrification and decarbonization are the big hot topics out there. Brian brought up a point about the election. I don't think it's going to change. We're here. It's being pushed, not just at the federal level, but at the different state levels. So let's look at it as opportunities, not as a political thing. And it does give us a number of opportunities. So let's go on to the next slide. What we have to keep in mind, though, is there on the federal one, the IRA, there are two programs. There's a rebate program and there's a tax credit program. There are also rebates at the state and local levels in some places. I think there's 38 states that have programs. So there are a lot, but there's on the IRA a clear delineation between rebates and tax credits. So we'll continue to the next slide and talk a little bit about them. Awesome. So tax credits, the 25C tax credit and 25D tax credit have been here for a while, but they were extended and they were increased. So prior to 2023, the 25C tax credit was a maximum of $500 per house. In 2023, as part of the IRA, it was extended to a maximum of $3,200 per house per year, and you can combine different credits. So you can see here, there's $600 to $2,000 for high efficient equipment, all kinds of stuff out there. It's codified for 10 years. So we are in year 2 now of this. Next slide, please, Austin. So these are the tax credits. So 25C is the one most of us are going to use most of the time. That's residential. So again, it's 30% of the installation cost is able to be done for a tax credit. There's up to $600 for air conditioners, up to $600 for furnaces, up to $2,000 in heat pumps. So if you're doing a crossover system with a furnace and a heat pump, there's up to $2,600 for those two items. And as I said, it maxes out at up to $3,200 per year. So you can combine other things, being that, this is our industry. I'm not getting into a lot of the other things, but for example, windows and doors, there's credits. I know for personal experience, doors can be up to $250 per door for a maximum of $500 per year. Then you get into the 25D, which is geothermal heat pumps. 45L would be your multifamily, and along those lines. So you may see those, and with those you can see it's up to $500 per unit, or if there's zero energy, up to $1,000. There's a lot more things that go into the 45L, like energy audits, etc. Big thing to remember though with these is it's up to, they are tax credits. Do not promise money to someone with it because you don't know their tax liability. Refer them to their tax professional, but you can tell them up to. So next slide, please. And now we have David doing the work. Next slide, please, David. All right. Can you get that back onto the slideshow then, David? So it's just easier for everyone to see. While he's figuring this out, the tax credits are based on CEE efficiency standards. So there's really two different things out there: CEE and there's Energy Star. CEE, which is for the U.S. and Canada, breaks down the U.S. though really into two. Here we showed 3 zones, but it's north and south. The southwest and the southeast, thank you, David, fall into the same requirements. There's 2 tiers of energy efficiency in these. There's tier 1 and tier 2. Now, most of us, if not all of us, are going to fall into north. If you're going into Delaware or Maryland, those 2 states fall into the south, and you can see the different efficiencies. South has a little bit lighter on the heating requirements than the north. So you can see the tier 1 here. David, if you go to the next slide, please. And back up one. There we go. Tier 2. So this is the higher efficiency, but you can see some of the things here. So the big thing to remember for the north, which again would be most of us, we have the SEER 2 requirement, HSPF 2 requirement, EER 2 requirement, but we have a COP requirement. And this touches back to one of the things Austin was saying. So to qualify, we have to be at least a COP of 1.75 at 5 degrees. So that's pretty significant. That means it's 75% more energy efficient than electric resistance heating at 5 degrees. Or if we look at some other products, some other heat pumps out there, which may be dropping down to 1 or below 1, significantly higher. Then there are two different capacity maintenance categories. You have to hit one, you don't have to hit both. I've very rarely seen a system not hit both that hits one, but it'll either be 5 degrees versus 47. 47 is an ASHRAE standard for heating capacity. F5 is what we've set here in the north as being a requirement. So we have to either be 70% of that ratio there or 17 to 47. And now 17 is another ASHRAE requirement, and it's 58%. You can see in the south, we don't have the COP or the capacity maintenance requirements. Next slide, please, David. Wanted to point this out, as I said, there's other 25C tax credits. And one of them is for the electric panel upgrade. And that gets important, especially here in the Northeast. We have a lot of homes that may only have 100 amp service, and you may need to upgrade it. So they can claim, if you're doing a panel upgrade as part of the HVAC upgrade, they can claim up to 30% of that for a maximum of $600. So again, if you're doing, let's say, a crossover, you're doing an MURA, could be up to $2,000. Doing it with a high efficiency furnace could be up to another $600. And let's say you have to upgrade the panel, it could be up to another $600. And there's the full $3,200 that can be claimed per year. Something also your customers may ask, and you may not know, is it can be done every year. So we are in year 2. So for this year and the next 8 years after this, they could be potentially claiming up to $3,200 each of those years. Next slide, please. Rebate is the next big one. Everyone's heard talk about the federal rebates in IRA. They are not here yet. That's something to keep in mind. There are no federal rebates yet. The federal rebates are all going to be based on income eligibility. That's the other big thing. So let's go to the next slide and we can talk a little bit more about them. So there's the two programs, very similar. One of the big differences, it's based on Energy Star, not CE like the tax credits. You see each program got $4.3 billion allocated. Sounds like a lot of money. Now what it is, it's up to $8,000 for heat pumps and up to $4,000 for the electrical service and up to $2,500 for the wiring for a maximum of $14,000. But the big one again is it's based on income. It's going to be low moderate income housing, which is up to 80% of the median income. Still, it's going to be based on each state how they decide to do the median income. It might be by zip code, it might be by county. That's all yet to be determined because each state gets to determine that. But any homeowners that are less than 80% will qualify for that maximum amount of rebates. Any homes between 80% and 150% median will qualify for up to 50% of those rebates. Then there's and it's basically a very similar program for the homes program. But again, there's going to be energy audits, things like that with that program. So we're mostly going to be focused on the high efficiency electric home rebate program. Next slide, please. Here you can see the amount of money that was allocated to each state. So focus on Pennsylvania. You can see there was $259 million allocated. So of that $4.3 billion, that's how much Pennsylvania is getting. Now they'll take up to, and which to me I will assume they'll take the full amount of that, up to 20% of that for administration fees. So once this rebate rolls out, if we take 20% off 259 million, call it 50 million, you're at $200 million in Pennsylvania. I don't expect that full amount of money to last the full 10 years of the program. So now it's time to get very used to the program, get yourself knowledgeable on it so that you're ready to run as soon as it hits your state, because it's going to go quick. We don't have a lot of information yet, but it's anticipated that maybe 4 states will launch late Q4 this year. And then the rest of the states will probably launch late Q1 into Q2 next year. Again, that's moving, but there's only a couple states that have formally presented their plan to the federal government. So that's why no one's ready to go yet. Next slide, please. But then, as I mentioned, most of the states have local utility and rebate programs, and we'll cover a little bit of them now to give you an idea, because those are some, depending where you are, could be significant. So next slide, please, Austin. If we started in Pennsylvania, you can see PECO has different ones. There's a $200 or $300 rebate. They're basing for air source heat pumps, they're basing theirs on Energy Star. And you can see the requirements. Go to PECO's website to get more information on that. Next slide, please. PP&L, you can see again different rebates. Here we get ones for smart thermostats. You can see there's ones for heat pump water heaters. But there's a couple of different air source heat pump or ductless you can look at. So tier, basically they're lower efficiency. So tier 1, there's a $350 rebate. Higher efficiency, which would basically tier 2, is a $450. And then there's just $400 for ductless. And it's per outdoor unit. So the air source heat pump generally is going to be the one you're going to use, because that EER2 number is so restrictive. I shouldn't say that generally. It's the one you're going to use a lot of times because you get the higher efficiency or the higher dollar amount. And again, you can use more. Next slide shows more utilities. Going to move through the utilities pretty quickly. Here's First Energy. Again, there's different ones. There's, again, the air source heat pump, which gets up to $500 depending on the unit. You can see a multi-zone there at the bottom for $200. Next slide. Continuing in Pennsylvania, UGI, you can see different ones. Here where they're putting it based on the cooling capacity, so the rated size. Next slide. Delaware, here's we can get some different ones. You can get, I believe in Delaware, they have to do the cost assessment to get it. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I believe that's what I read, if I remember correctly. And you can see the different amounts again. Here we can see on tier 2 heat pump up to $2,200. So a lot of choices there. Hybrid system. So here they're taking into account what we call the crossover, maybe a 38 MURA with a furnace. You can see some significant ones there too. Next slide, please. New Jersey, there's a couple different utilities again. PSE&G, talking the same thing with dollar amounts, different ones for different things. But the big one is the on-bill repayment. If you are operating in PSE&G territory as a dealer, you want to register with PSE&G. What that allows you to do is PSE&G does all the financing. It's 0%, 84 months or 120 months, depending on if they're income qualified and how much they're spending. But 0% on-bill financing to the homeowner, and PSE&G pays you directly. As we see changes with the economy, the cost of equipment, 0% on-bill financing is a huge opportunity for any of you doing business in PSE&G territory. Next slide, please. And then we got for New Jersey, for Atlantic City Electric and JCP&L, they have the same program. And again, you can see it's air source heat pump up to $1,000 for a system. and then lots of different things. Next slide, Austin. And that's all I have. I tried to keep it pretty straightforward. Again, the big thing to remember is federal tax credits are there. Utility rebates are there. Federal rebates are not in yet, but I would strongly start thinking about how you can market and how you can position yourself to service the low to median income homes, since there will be significant rebates there. Looking financing options, things like that. Again, if you have any questions, reach out to any of us, and thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Yep.
That, guys, is pretty much all we have. I just wanted to remind you of a couple websites and resources. And again, if you need any of this stuff, please feel free to reach out to me. Ductlesscarrier.com, Ductlessbryant.com. Those are websites that are put together by us at Pierce Phelps. I mean, we don't actually literally put them together, but they are our websites. And they're a great reference for homeowners. They've got case studies, videos, all that kind of stuff. If you're interested in any of the case study, if you go and you see some case studies and you're like, I would like to have one of those done, please reach out. We would love to work with you to get that done. You can use it for your own marketing purposes. We do have sales and installation videos here. I could just call them product overview and installation videos, I guess. But we do have those on all of our indoor pieces of equipment. So the 38 MUR, well, that's the indoor and outdoor. For the 38 MUR, we've got them for the 40 MBAB, the 40 MBAA, the 40 MAHBs, the ceiling cassettes, the slim duct units. They typically are between 5 and 8 minutes long, and they cover all the highlights in terms of compatibility, installation, setup, and maintenance. Especially with the, excuse me, with the, I'm sorry, with the air handler systems and the tax credits and everything, I'm getting lots and lots and lots of emails asking for AHRI certificates or whether something makes a rebate. I'm happy to answer that email, but it might not be down, in the time frame that you need it. A lot of times when it comes to that, you're wanting to send that to your homeowner like that afternoon. You can always go to either my carrier ratings or mybryantratings.com. It's very easy to use. I was going to put a little video in and I didn't, maybe I should have, but maybe I'll do it for the air handler one, since that's really what it revolves around anyway, but very easy to use. You select the outdoor model, you select the capacity, you hit display ratings. It gives you the AHRI certificate number, it gives you all the efficiencies, and it tells you yes or no to a tax credit for north, south, and another region that we don't have anything to do with it. What is that? Central. So please be aware. I just talked to a lot of guys that aren't aware of those websites. Very easy to use. In my estimation, it's much easier to use than the AHRI website. So if you're contacting me because you don't like the AHRI website, I understand. Try this. It only takes a second to get an AHRI rating. We do still have training available, both service and installation, as well as on the 38 MURs in our lab in Valley Forge. Just want to remind everybody also that we have a dedicated webinar. Probably will not be this long, so I apologize. This ran a little long. They always seem to. My fault, nobody else's. Just doing a little bit deeper dive into the air handler systems, looking at the performance and efficiencies, as well as the installation consideration setup, answering any questions, talking about thermostats and all that good stuff. So please be aware of that. We'll also announce, like we said earlier in the presentation, another webinar for the fall when we start to unpack all the new equipment. And then please come see us at the trade show. David and I will be, and Ethan as well, I believe, right? We'll be at the booth at the trade show. It's coming up, so we will look forward to seeing you guys there. And with that, I'll open it up to some questions. I think we did a pretty good job at answering questions along the way. But if there's any more questions, I'll leave it open for a few more minutes. If there aren't and you're getting out of here, thank you again for taking the time. I know it's a large time commitment, but we're glad you guys keep showing up and see the value. So thank you. Thanks, Brian. Thanks, Barb.
Thanks, Brian. I'll let you know.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. We'll see you at the trade show. Thanks, Scott. All right, guys, looks like about half of the attendees have left. I'm going to guess half of you are asleep. So oh, we got one. Oh, that's just Jonathan. Thanks, Jonathan. We're going to end it here. And if you do have any questions, like I said, this will go out in a recording and the presentation will go out to everybody that attended. And if you have any questions or need anything, please don't hesitate to get in contact with us. Thank you.